and separate legislation, I'll go for that. I agree with Councilmember Swans here that a 30-day referral is not the right way to go, but for lack of a better situation here, I think separate legislation to do the Menninger plan is the right way to go. And also on Tuesday night we had the Steve Gores from the Citizens of Responsible Government, and he told us that he supports eliminating the committee of the whole, but he wants public hearings on Thursday night. With the Menninger plan, that does this. So if Councilmember Menninger decides to introduce legislation to do his plan, I will support that. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on referral? The chair will recognize a council member from the 15th district.
I would like to basically repeat that. I like what Councilmember Menninger is suggesting. I think sometimes things get lost in the translation. Our problem is not public hearings. In my opinion, our problem is the committee of the whole, which is redundant. And however we get to that point, if a referral gets us to that point of perhaps not having a committee of the whole eventually, but having public hearings before the council, and if new legislation is what's required, I'll publicly say I will support Mr. Menninger and co-sponsor it if he wishes to do that. But however we get there, I think is important for us to do it.
Is there further discussion on referral? We have a motion on the floor is to refer for 30 days. If there is no other discussion, please cast your votes. Waiting for one vote.
1, 3, 6, 12, 15, and 17.
Motion has failed. What is the pleasure of the council? The chair recognizes a council member from the 15th district.
I wanted to support Mr. Menninger's reconsideration. Was I supposed to vote yes or no?
You would have voted yes to support reconsideration. Or to support referral, excuse me. We have voted. We have voted on reconsideration. That's why we're discussing it. The chair will recognize a council member from the 1st district.
I really think you need to give this a lot of thought. So I will postpone this for 30 days until we can come up with a plan.
I don't know that that's a motion, Mr. I believe that's the same motion that was just on the floor. And if there's okay, are you asking for a special meeting?
A 30-day, postpone for 30 days for a special meeting would be appropriate. We need to have more discussion by the public, and that's what we're here for. We represent the public. We keep forgetting that. We make our phone calls, you make your contacts, but we forget about the people. The people is who we represent, and they have a right to be heard on this. So I can postpone this indefinitely, then it kills it. That's not the agenda here. I want to postpone it to a special date, and I can do that.
Is there a second for that motion? All right. Motion is to postpone this for 30 days? Okay. If there's no discussion, chair recognize a council member from the 9th district. We did get a second from the council member from the 6th district. Could you clarify that motion? You know, are you postponing it to a special meeting? And do you want to set the time of that?
I can postpone it according to Robert's Rules of Order to the next scheduled session. So.
Okay, we'll hear the city's attorney opinion on this. Mr. City Attorney.
I just want to make sure that the minutes properly reflect the motion being made. So what I'm hearing you say is that your motion to postpone definitely is to the next council meeting, therefore bypassing all the committee meetings, the subcommittee meetings of the council, going right to the next council meeting. So this will not be considered until this exact time next month in this exact type of same forum, as opposed to asking for a special meeting that is specifically 30 days out on this sole agenda topic.
I guess my intent is to postpone it to the next session. Session would include the first J&A meeting. And then it would go through the other channels, correct?
The motion to refer and the
I-
motion to commit is the one that sends it to the sub-units. That one had failed.
Right.
The motion postpone indefinitely then, as I understand you stating, would be, it's not specifically 30 days, but rather to the next regular council meeting, which therefore bypasses J&A, bypasses committee of the whole, and is just placed on the next common council agenda.
That is not my intent. I want it the next scheduled sessions, which would be the J&A.
Then that would be the same thing as a referral, which was just voted down then.
Postpone, though, is different than a referral. It's postponing, Robert's Rule of Order. I have the floor, Mr. Farmer, thank you. Excuse me?
Chair will recognize a council member from the 10th district.
The motion is framed as not in order before the council. It is, as Stephen Matty has just revealed, it is exactly the same as the motion we voted down. I ask the chair to either roll it out of order, or I will appeal the decision of the chair to the body of the whole.
Well, I'll allow the council member from the 1st district to explain what you would like to do, but I agree with the city attorney that if you want this to go to the subcommittee meetings, that's a motion to refer, which was just made and was failed. If you want to postpone it and skip the subcommittee meetings, I'll recognize that motion if we get a second for it.
There needs to be more discussion. And I have read Robert's Rules of Order. You can postpone to a future session. Now, whether it's the Committee of the Whole or the J&A, why couldn't we have a special J&A meeting the same night as the Committee of the Whole for the discussion to take place? By then, we would have someone come up with some ideas on how we can move forward in a more efficient, capitalize that, process. There is nothing wrong with postponing this to the next Committee of the Whole evening with a special meeting of the J&A.
We'll hear the city attorney's opinion on that.
The opinion of the legal department is that if you wish to do a postpone to a definite period of time, there's two ways that that can occur. The first way, and you have to distinguish it from a motion to reconsider, which is, a motion to refer. The motion to refer sends it through all the subunits of the Common Council. Therefore, a motion to postpone definitely puts it to a specific meeting. That specific meeting would be the next Common Council meeting if the 30 days is referenced to mean specifically the next session. And the next session of the actual Common Council meeting would be whatever that date is in the next month for the actual regular Common Council meeting. The other option for the postpone definitely is if you take the postponement for 30 days literally, meaning that whatever day 30 is from today, that would be a special Common Council meeting on this specific topic.
So can't you postpone it to a special subcommittee meeting?
In the opinion of the legal department, you have the jurisdiction right now is in the Common Council. If you want to refer it, that would be a referral or a commitment. That's the same motion that sends it to a different committee. You could create a separate or a new committee to send it to, but in that case, that motion has already failed, and the postponement definitely keeps it in the same governing body, which is the Common Council.
All right, well, you can postpone this to the next council meeting, but you cannot postpone it to a committee meeting.
So I can't do it indefinitely. I have to have a specific date. Is that correct, Mr. Matty? Postpone indefinitely means I'm going to kill it, and that's not my intent.
Mr. Attorney?
It's correct. A postpone indefinite is a motion to kill the legislation. In this case, what I heard you say was a postpone for 30 days, and that's why I had asked the question whether you were asking for a specific common council meeting, specifically 30 days from today's date, or whether the 30-day reference was merely meant the next regular common council meeting, where it may or may not be exactly 30 days away.
Then I'll postpone it to the next council meeting for a special session. Thank you.
Is there a second for that? All right, motion on the floor is to postpone this to the next common council meetings. Thereby it will skip any subcommittee meetings and go straight to this common council meeting. Is there discussion on the motion to postpone? If there is none, would you like to speak on the motion to postpone?
The city attorney took care of everything I wanted to say. It is the practice around here, when you postpone, it goes to the next regular meeting. It doesn't happen very often, but in the last 2 years, we did have one that was postponed, and it went to the regular council meeting, not to the standing committees. Thank
All
you.
right, motion on the floor is to postpone for 30 days. The chair will recognize a council member from the 17th district.
If we do this, would that prohibit, and I don't know if he wants to do this or not, but if Mr. Menninger wanted to write something up and have it ready on, it couldn't be ready, that'd be it tonight, wouldn't it? I'm still trying to figure out how his idea gets the light of day. Is that foolish for me to think it's even possible for his idea to get the light of day?
Well, I mean, it can get the light of day at any point. He could write up a caption tonight and, read it in at the end of the meeting. If this is postponed for 30 days, he can, come up with an amendment to this at the next meeting to change it. He can kill this. He can write up new legislation. There are any number of options.
Thank you.
The chair will recognize the council president.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that in relation to that particular motion, if it's referred to a council meeting, there is no, or postponed to the next council meeting, there will be no public hearings in relation to it. So the purpose of the motion, which I understand the purpose to be, is to have public input, then it just isn't going to work.
The chair will recognize the council member from the 1st district.
Thank you. In response to that, we have had public hearings at council meetings. I know there's a few here that don't like extra meetings, but we have had reference to a special meeting, and we can make a vote to have the public be heard that evening. I guess I would have preferred it to go to the committee of the whole, but if that is what our attorney said could not be done, then it certainly, is appropriate at the council meeting, but I'm hoping to have a special meeting before. Let me remind you, how many short circuits were there this month? 3. We had 3 short circuits on development agreements and a TIF. So who's to say Councilmember Mettinger couldn't come up with a short circuit? I think all you need is, 5 signatures? So, if you got some ideas, put them together, but I think this is, talk about the light of day, I think we've turned the lights off, unfortunately. Thank you.
A motion on the floor is to postpone this to the next regular meeting of the Common Council. Chair will recognize a council member from the 8th district.
Well, if you pay attention to the timing, if Councilmember Mettinger would like, he may introduce something in the November session. It'll be acted on in December, and this whole new plan wasn't to take effect until January anyhow. So he's got plenty of time to bring in something new.
Is there further discussion? If there is no further discussion on this motion to postpone to the next regular meeting of the Common Council, please cast your votes. A yes will postpone this to the next regular meeting of the Common Council. A no vote will not.
1, 3, 6, and 15.
Motion has failed. What is the pleasure of the council in regard to this item? The chair will recognize a council member from the 1st district.
That should have been taken out.
The chair will recognize a council member from the 14th district.
I'll move to amend the legislation, removing the 5 signatures requirement and include public hearing on all items beginning at each regular city council meeting monthly. It's with no council debate or vote. Following the public hearings, we would then begin our regular monthly city council meeting as scheduled.
All right, motion on the floor is to amend to allow a public hearing for all items on the agenda. Is there discussion on the motion? If there is none, chair recognizes a council member from the 10th district.
Hopefully it takes 2/3 ultimately for that to pass. I think that's putting an awful lot on Thursday night, Mr. Mettinger. I realize everybody wants to accommodate you here, but I have been here when public hearings took us to 2 in the morning and we began our regular committee of the whole then, and that's one of the reasons it was on a separate night. Public hearings have been kind of light as of late by comparison, but Mr. Sequist was also here reporting on these meetings when we used to routinely run on Tuesday night to 2 to 3 in the morning. And if that ever were to do, that just makes it to where you're then doing the important stuff when you can hardly stay awake.
Chair will recognize a council member from the 9th district.
Thank you, Your Honor. What Councilmember Menninger is proposing is public hearing only. There would be no discussion among the council members, except obviously questions for the speakers. There would also be no votes. So if you look at in 1 hour's time, conceivably, and each person gets 3 minutes, conceivably you could get through 20 speakers. I don't think that this is gonna put us in the wee hours of the morning. At the most, I could see this will make our visit on the 2nd Thursday of the month, the regular meeting night, maybe an hour extra. So I still think this is a great plan, so I'm going to vote for the amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Council Member from the 17th district, would you like to speak on the amendment?
Just to clarify, Your Honor, it's my understanding then, Mr. Menninger's proposal that the council would not go through every item on the so-called committee of the whole agenda. The only things that would be dealt with in those public hearings are the items that people wish to speak to. And beyond that, we would, when they're finished, we would go into a council meeting. Did you think at all, Paul, about maybe starting this up 30 minutes earlier, starting our council meetings at 7 o'clock, or starting our public hearings at 7 o'clock?
Mr. Council Member from the 14th district, would you like to respond?
I think that would make sense to start at 7 o'clock. 7:30, I still think that's a reasonable hour. And then if it takes an extra hour, you're only going a half hour longer. Again, that because we wouldn't be voting or addressing everything in the committee of the whole, it would keep the public hearings but reduce the redundancy. So it would essentially be like the committee of the whole, just a little flip-flopped.
Chair will recognize a council member from the 7th district.
Thank you. I would respectfully request that the time frame of this coming into effect and its sunsetting to parallel the sunset of the suspension of the Council of the Whole meeting. So this would be effective from the January session through the June session, if I remember correctly, our experiment on the suspension of the Council of the Whole for this special listening session prior to the Common Council meetings.
Okay. Well, if there's no objection, the chair will rule that that is part of the motion, because that is part of the original legislation. Seeing no objection, that will sunset, this amendment will sunset as originally intended by this legislation as it was adopted last month. The chair will recognize a council member from the 15th district.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, I thought Mr. Manninger said this, but I want to be, so if this plan follows through with obviously the sunset, there would not be a committee of the whole meeting on Tuesdays. Essentially, there'd be public hearings and then a council meeting on Thursday.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Is there other discussion on the motion to amend on the floor? The chair will recognize the council member from the 9th district.
So we don't have the argument after the vote to pass the Menninger amendment. Is that a majority vote or a 2/3 vote?
This is a majority vote, and the ultimate adoption of this will require a 2/3 majority. This amendment requires a simple majority, but the final approval will require 2/3 majority. All right, if there is no other discussion on the motion to amend, please cast your votes.
Four, 8, and 10.
The motion is carried. Is there further discussion on this legislation as it has been amended? The chair will recognize the council member from the 10th district.
Well, I'm just going to make the plea that I think what we did last month has value and that we would give it a try. Mr. Mettinger's proposal is certainly an alternative, and if what we find, if he's right or Mrs. Richmond is right and it doesn't work, my goodness, in February or March we could institute Mr. Mettinger's alternative plan. We don't have to wait till June. June's just an automatic date. But I think what we did was good. And it puts us, we still have more public hearings than probably any other municipality in the state of Wisconsin, even if we leave this as we left it last month. So I hope that we'll stick with that. It is worthy of a try. I'm nearing the end of my tenure here, so I don't have a lot of skin in this game. Those of you who are going to be here for some of you will be here for 10 or 15 years. So I think in the end you'll want very much for us to have at least tried this, and if it's found wanting, then we can change it. Not leave what we placed last month.
All right, a motion on the floor is to adopt this resolution as it has been amended. And just to clarify, Mr. City Attorney, if this is not passed tonight, what's the outcome? Does the outcome from last month still stand?
With a motion to reconsider, the legislation is brought back as if it had not been adopted. So if the motion here fails, then the entire legislation fails.
Okay. Chair recognize the council member from the 10th district.
Are you saying then that by reconsideration, a simple majority vote, he undoes a 2/3 vote last month?
Yes.
Doesn't it take 2/3 to change a rule?
Takes 2/3 to change a rule.
Didn't we pass a rule last month?
But you also adopted a reconsideration. You have in your rules the option to do a reconsideration.
Right, but wouldn't it take 2/3 then to change the rule under reconsideration? Because this is substantially different. This is very different now than from what we adopted last month. This certainly would take 2/3 to adopt. It's completely different legislation now.
The opinion of the legal department, according to your rules, is that you have the ability to reconsider any previous legislation by majority vote.
I would agree.
And in this particular circumstance, that's what happened. There was a majority vote to reconsider the previous legislation.
I agree.
And what would happen then is if you would, under the opinion of the legal department, we don't have the final say in this. The chair would have to make a ruling. If you disagree with the ruling from the chair, then you have the ability to do a motion to appeal that ruling to determine ultimately what the rule is for this body.
But you see the conundrum here, because his amendment makes it substantially new legislation, a new rule, and you're now putting us in your ruling is saying that a mere majority adopts the rule that later can only be repealed by 2/3. It doesn't make sense.
I understand what you're saying, but at the same time too, I have to live by the rules that this body creates, and I have to interpret them based on the rules and the precedent that you've established in the past. I can give an opinion, and then ultimately the chair, the presiding officer, can decide whether to follow that opinion or give a different ruling. And if the body does not like the ultimate ruling from the chair, you have the motion to appeal to establish the definitive process and precedence for this body.
Well, I don't want to get into a fight here. I just find it incongruous, there's a word for you, that we're now changing a rule by simple majority vote.
I
And we're
understand what you're
instituting a
saying. I
brand new
agree. I
rule.
don't want to get in an argument with you. I'm just giving the opinion of the legal
And we're
department.
instituting a brand new rule, never before considered, never, ever having had a public hearing, ever, anywhere, and we're going to do it on simple majority vote. This is something only Mrs. Richmond could have dreamed up.
All right, Mr. Council Member from the 3rd District, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, I think the main goal of the people that were in opposition was to keep the public's voice there. And I think that this does do that. And it's still under a 6-month sunset clause, which at that point you can decide that it works or it doesn't work, and you can go back to the way it was. You're keeping the voice in there of the public. I will support that, and I ask everybody else to too. Thank you.
All right, motion on the floor is to adopt this resolution as it has been amended. If there is no discussion, Chair recognizes the council member from the 10th District.
That's nice. I don't think this is my question. And I think you all see the contradictory nature of what Mr. Matty has just said. And I am desirous. I don't think what I'm going to do here is going to pass, but I do think somewhere along the line, somebody has to say that if you're going to change a rule, it's 2/3. You just can't backdoor it and say, because by Mr. Matty's interpretation, I could come in with a motion to rescind any rule we have next month, which is a simple majority vote, and we'd be on our way. And that's not how it works, okay? I don't know where and how he came up with this. This is why I asked about it in the very beginning, and I was definitely led to believe in the very beginning it would take 2/3. So I'm going to ask the chair for a ruling as to whether this roll call takes 2/3 for a change in the rules, because it is a change in the rules from what we adopted last month. Then if the chair rules one way or the other, I'll probably appeal the decision of the chair to the body as a whole. I really doubt if that's going to pass, because the majority wants Mr. Mettinger's thing. And as my father used to counsel me, the majority gets to do the damn well what they want. It's regrettable. And that's the purpose of the rules, is to keep the majority in check. But I really don't think this watershed moment should occur without at least some kind of protest. So I'm going to ask the chair for a ruling.
Well, my ruling is that if this receives a 2/3 majority vote, obviously the resolution will be adopted as it has been amended. If it does not receive the 2/3 majority, it will not be adopted. That's correct. That's correct. The chair will recognize the council member from the 1st District.
So, Your Honor, what you're saying is you're disagreeing with what our city attorney
No.
just said?
No.
Pardon me?
No, my ruling is that I agree with the opinion of the city attorney.
As he stated, the majority.
That's correct.
Okay, because I heard you say 2/3, so.
That's correct. It will require a 2/3 vote to
But
adopt. If it does not
I heard him
receive-
say something about the majority vote, not
that
2/3.
The majority vote allowed you to reconsider this item.
We already reconsidered it.
That's correct. Okay, the chair recognizes the council member from the 10th District.
I want to point this out. We can't afford public hearings on Thursday night. We can't handle a simple rule change in an hour's time. You know, we're not even done here. You're saying that if there isn't an affirmative vote on this rule change of 2/3, it does not pass.
That's correct.
And then my next question would be, I would interpret that, then the rule most recently passed would still be in effect, because the legislation to alter it failed. It would be like any other change. If you came in with a rule change to make it that we were going to meet on the 5th Wednesday of the month, it might get 50%, but it didn't get 2/3, so thus it failed, and you're still meeting on whatever Thursday of the month it would be.
My ruling is that if this does not receive a 2/3 majority vote, that we don't have the legislation that was adopted last month.
We what?
That's correct. We do not have it, that it is not in effect.
I see. Okay. Well, then I'm going to I'm going to appeal the decision of the chair to the body of the whole. I fully expect that to fail, but I really find it outrageous that we're now amending rules with 50%.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to appeal the ruling of the chair on this item. As many as are in favor of the ruling of the chair, you'll vote yes. If you are not in favor of the ruling of the chair, you'll vote no. The chair recognizes the council president.
Thank you. We sure have got ourselves into a conundrum here tonight. And I think that everybody really has the best intent here. We're just struggling with how to get to where we really need to be. And what troubles me about it is that what's happening is we're trying to create legislation on the run, which is kind of how the whole thing happened in the first case, where the idea that